Hey guys, today we're going to talk about North and South Korea. So these two countries are ethnically similar. Like the people who live there are all ethnically Korean, but the cultures are just vastly different, and that has a lot to do with their type of government. So one is very very free, and one is tyrannical. So we'll take a look at the two and kind of compare and contrast their cultures. Okay, so before we get started, show you kind of where Korea is. So this right here is Korea. This is called the Korean Peninsula, and you can see it sits right between China and Japan, and Russia also borders North Korea here. Okay, so very little bit, but that's important as we get into other things in history. So sits right between China, Russia, and Japan, and so that it's kind of a disputed territory throughout their history. So we'll get into that, but I just want you guys to know where it is. Okay, so the people. So like I said, so Korea is ethnically homogenous. So that means that most of the people who live there are ethnically Korean. But they are divided into a communist North Korea and then a democratic South Korea. Most of the people who live in Korea live on the coastal plains. So about 2/3 of the population live in the capitals. Okay, so 2/3 live in either Seoul or Pyongyang. Okay, so this is of the total Korean population. So Seoul's in South Korea, Pyongyang's in North Korea. South Korea has a higher population density than North Korea and has a much higher population than North Korea. They have about twice the population. So, North Korea's government has focused on industrialization and actually militarization since World War II. So, they've been trying to build up their military. But this has led to a shortage of farm labor because more people are moving to the cities for jobs to work in factories. And so, North Korea is about 60% urban today, and South Korea is about 80% urban. But what's bad about this industrialization is because there's a shortage of farm labor, there's not as much food available for all the people. So the thing is the people in Pyongyang, only people who are part of the Communist Party are allowed to live in Pyongyang, and so they're usually very well fed. But everybody else is not. Okay, they suffer from a lot of malnutrition in North Korea. Okay, so to escape communism, many people fled from North Korea into South Korea or into other countries. So other countries would include the United States or Canada. And they're escaping this crazy tyrannical communist regime. One thing you're going to notice is nobody ever escapes capitalist countries to go into communist countries. That never happens in the history of the world. That has never happened. Um, so it's always the other way around. Always people coming from communists trying to escape into capitalist countries. So South Korea's population is more than doubled since the 1950s, and now it is, like I said before, it's twice that of North Korea. And the reason for that is because their standard of living is much, much higher. It's, I mean, it's drastic the difference in the standard of living. They live very similar to us. So after the Korean War, we really helped South Korea out a lot, and we still to this day continue to. We still have bases in that in South Korea, and they they as a result have thrived. Okay. In North Korea, because they're under a crazy communist regime, they haven't. They have a much lower life expectancy. They have much lower standard of living. So North and South Korea are divided by what's called the DMZ, or the Demilitarized Zone. So this is a line. It's about at the 38th parallel. So at the end of the Korean War, or before the Korean War, after World War II, there was a division between North Korea and South Korea at what's called the 38th parallel. So that's the 38th line of latitude. And since then, on each side of the DMZ, basically the war took North Korea is going to invade South Korea to start the war in 1950. And then North Koreans are going, I'm sorry, the United States and the UN are going to push back and get almost all the way to China, and then the Chinese are going to intervene, and then they're going to push back, and then there's basically been a stalemate since about 1953 at around the 38th parallel, so just about where it had started. But on each side of the line, it's kind of like a staring contest, where they just stare at each other The North Koreans just watch the other side, so do the South Koreans and the United States. And we just sit there and watch. And it's just been a staring contest for the last, almost 70 years. So, despite tension, the two sides have begun to cooperate on trade and tourism. That is one thing that Donald Trump has kind of made a priority for his administration, was to try to bring more peace to the North Koreans. I think he's done a little bit of a good job with it. He has certainly negotiated a little more with Kim Jong Un than others have, but it's still a very volatile situation. So, okay. So early history. So in the 1200s, the Chinese are going to bring their culture to Korea, and part of that culture is Buddhism. So Buddhism will become a major religion in Korea, and so there's going to be two dynasties that are going to unite Korea. So you have the Silla and then the Koryo dynasty, and the Koryo is where we actually get the name Korea. Is from them. So they unite the Korean Peninsula, and so up until World War II, they will be a single country. So they'll be their own country, just called Korea. Throughout its history, though, countries have fought over its land. Like I showed you at the beginning, they sit right between China, Russia, and then Japan. And so 1300, China controlled it and introduced Confucianism. And so as a result of that, Confucianism will become the model for Korea's type of government, their education, and their family life. And then in the 1500s, Japan will invade. And then in the 1800s, the Japanese and Europeans are going to fight over it in separate wars. So Korea, as a result of these, is going to become isolationist. So it's going to be known as the Hermit Kingdom. So this is what North Korea is known as today, just North Korea, not South Korea. And basically, what that means is that, like North Korea, they just stick to themselves. They do not have much interaction with the outside world, especially their people. Their government does a little bit, but their people do not. Like everything they read is whatever the government wants them to read. They don't have internet or anything like that there. And if they did, the government would restrict sites to just government approved sites. Um, but so they don't have cell phones. They don't have like anything like that to where they can get outside information. And then so that's what I mean by the Hermit Kingdom. So they are just totally isolated within themselves. So the Sino-Japanese War, that's a war between China and Japan. They're going to fight over Korea. And then the Russo-Japanese War, Japan and Russia, are going to fight over Korea. So Japan wins both those wars. And then so they will gain Korea. So Japan will control it until 1945. And then obviously 1945 is the end of World War II. And so once Japan has to basically relinquish all of their territory. So not just Korea, everything here that's not Japan, they had to give back. So they tried to force Japanese language and culture on the Koreans, but that doesn't really take. Okay, it will a little bit in South Korea, but not as much in North Korea. But South Korea, their culture is more influenced by modern Japan than Japan pre 1945. So, okay. So divided Korea. So after World War II, Korea was divided into two. So they were divided along the 38th parallel, like I said. So you have the communist North Korea, and then you have the capitalist South Korea. Okay, so these guys are backed by the United States and the United Nations. These guys are backed by China. Okay, so in 1950, North Korea decided to invade South Korea. They wanted to make a united Korea. All right, so what happened is they invaded all the way down to here. Okay, so this right here is the only spot that was left of South Korea that was not controlled by the Communist North. Then the US and United Nations came in and they pushed back all the way up to this line here. Okay, all the way up to here. And so this right here, here, and here, this is all that North Korea had left. Okay, and then the Chinese are going to step in and they're going to push back and they're going to get around here-ish, push back, and then they're going to fight back up, and then eventually, you can see right here, this is where China pushes to, and then they're going to fight back up, and this right here is where the line is today. Okay, so it's about at the 30th parallel, so you can see this, it's just a little bit more South Korea. Okay, so this has been a stalemate since 1953. So in 1953, they signed an armistice that ended the war, except the North Koreans still believe that the war is going on. In this time, millions of Koreans died. Both countries were devastated. We're going to look in just a second here. I'll show you a little video. It's very short that shows the how everything pushed back and forward. So here we go. Okay. Okay, so this is when the North Koreans are invading here, 1950. And they're just going to get everything but that one little spot in the corner. So the South Koreans are holding their own. UN is starting to step in, and here they go. And they're going to get all the way up to about China. Now China is in, push back up, and then China's really helping out here. Push all the way down to South Korea. We see a little more pushback by the South Koreans and the UN forces here. You can see it's a much slower process now. Alright, so this right here is where it stops. This is where so this is the stalemate, and then in 1953, like it says there, they signed the armistice. So this is just soldiers that have died. So about 678,000 soldiers have died in that war. Alright, so there's the credits for that. Let's move on. Alright, so today, obviously, North and South Korea are still separated, and they have experienced what's called cultural divergence. So cultural divergence is where it's where you have a single culture, but then they get separated and they grow apart. And so this happens because of their vastly different government and economic systems. So in South Korea, after the war, there was a military coup to put Major General Chung Hee in power. That's this guy right here. He will be assassinated in 1979. And after that, the South Koreans will demand to have a democracy. And so they're going to create a republic that's modeled after ours. So they have like a president and a Congress and things like that too. So they have been thriving since then. All right, so North Korea, on the other hand, has a centralized government that's controlled by the Korean Workers' Party. All the government officials belong to it. So it'd be like if everybody in our government was a Republican or everybody in our government was a Democrat. It'd be, one party power is usually not good. You need conflicting ideas. So anyway, so Kim Jong Un is now the ruler. That's this guy right here. Kim Jong Un is now the ruler of North Korea. Kim Jong Il was his father, and he's the one who negotiated these different talks I'm going to talk about here. So in 2000, talks between North and South Korea have improved relations. In 2002, North Korea did reactivate its nuclear reactor, and then 2006, they have tested a nuclear weapon. They have been testing missiles for a while now. Nothing that has reached nothing that can reach the United States. I don't think they would ever actually shoot into the United States because I think they would fear the blowback and the consequences of what the United States would do back to them, because it would be harsh. So their strict government rule in North Korea has led to food shortages, economic stagnation, and mismanagement of resources. There are about 200,000 political prisoners in North Korea right now, and they have most of them are in what are called slave labor camps. They basically there's these camps where they just work them to death, and so they have if you do something against the government. So let's say you try to escape into South Korea, and you get caught. So you would probably be executed, but your family might go to these slave labor camps. It could be even like your friends, anybody you've talked to, could be implicated in this. So they use fear as a way to keep their people in line. Okay, so this right here is advertisement for capitalism, basically. This is North and South Korea at night. This is China up here, just so you know too. But you can see there's a vast difference in North and South Korea. So you have South Korea, capitalist South Korea, and then communist North Korea. And there's an old joke that goes, it goes, what did communists use for light before the invention of the candle? Or before candles, not before the invention of candles. What did they use for light before candles? And the punchline is electricity, because they don't have electricity because the government mismanages resources. Anyway, I think that's funny. But you can see the one bright spot. That's where Pyongyang is. That's the capital city. But you see the rest of it's pretty much dark. So they don't have a lot of electricity or basic amenities like we do here. As you can see, South Korea definitely does. They are a bright light. And that's Seoul right there. This really bright light, that's their capital. Okay, this right here is a video about Kim Jong Il and the morning that happened after he died, and it's a little over the top. So we'll watch this here.
Tonight, an 11-day period of mourning is underway for Kim Jong-il, the dictator who died Saturday. And we were struck by images from inside the Hermit Kingdom showing grief-stricken North Koreans in despair, wailing uncontrollably. But is all that emotion real, forced, or a bit of both? ABC's David Wright reports from South Korea tonight.
Today, Kim Jong-il lay in state. News of his death, one final insult to the foreign intelligence agencies who tried for years unsuccessfully to penetrate his regime. They learned, like everyone else, from the official announcement, some 48 hours after his death. Today, Kim Jong-il's son and heir choked back what appeared to be real tears as he gave a solemn bow of goodbye.
He is truly not a ready for primetime player. The Chinese themselves are a little worried about whether he's really up to the task.
Today, most of the public displays of grief beggared belief. Father General, where are you? She wailed. Grown men, many in uniform, blubbered like babies.
Part of this is political, it's manufactured, and it's required on the part of the citizens. But you cannot discount that some of this is quite genuine.
When Kim Jong-il's father died, the outpouring of grief was equally over the top. The great leader, and later the dear leader, were North Korea's only celebrities. Today we met Sol Lee, a 23-year-old defector from the North, who said her generation doesn't buy it. People in my mother's generation were brainwashed, she said, but we're not so blind. State media released what they said was the last photo taken of Kim Jong-il on a supermarket escalator. Today, the escalator is a shrine. If only he could ride it again, she cried. These two countries are still at war, but today South Korea extended condolences to the North Korean people. And officials here said that they won't be lighting the Christmas trees on the DMZ. In the past, North Korea viewed Christmas trees on that heavily fortified border as a provocation. They don't celebrate Christmas there. They worship their leaders.
Yeah, so there you go. So it's a little over the top morning. There's other videos if you want to look on YouTube. There's all kinds of, just look up like Kim Jong Il funeral, and just people just over the top, just wailing. It's always, they say anyway, people who were there, that it was always more dramatic when the cameras were close. Okay, so wherever the cameras are, they're much more over the top wailing than there was, away from the cameras. So it's required to do that, and it's expected because you don't want to end up in a labor camp for not mourning correctly. And everything that he has ever touched is now a shrine. So like there's a park bench where he once sat at, that's a shrine now to him. So that escalator being a shrine is not a surprise at all. Just because they have done that with a lot of different things that he has even touched. So All right, let's move on. So, education. South Korea has very good education. You can see this picture in the top. This is a South Korean classroom that could be in the United States. You know, that's pretty good. So, most kids attend middle school, high school, and university attendance is up. In North Korea, though, their schools just teach about communism and the communist ideology. So this is what this is it's you'll hear this when we watch. You're gonna watch a video tomorrow about North Korea. It's called Juche, okay, and it's the idea that to get the basically brainwash people into loving the Kims and the dear leader. Um, and as far as healthcare goes, South Korea has very good healthcare. They're successful modern system, so they have a system similar to ours, and their life expectancy is about 77 years, which is about where ours is. Ours is a little bit higher, but not much. And then North Korea, they provide healthcare. The government does, but you can only get it if you are wealthy. Um, if you're living in Pyongyang, is the only decent healthcare, and then even there, it's not great. Uh, Most of their healthcare problems are related to poverty because they have very poor nutrition, lack of clean drinking water, different things like that. And as far as language goes, they both speak Korean, so they're both, you know, like I said before, like they're both ethnically the same people, and so they both even speak the same language. So okay. Religion. South Korea, they have freedom of religion, so they can practice whatever they like. So Confucianism, Buddhism, Christianity, and then a thing called blah, 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 Cheondogo, and this is a combination of all three of these religions. So as you saw in that video I just played for you, they celebrate Christmas. They put Christmas trees up as a little bit of an antagonization to the North Koreans. In North Korea, they don't allow religion. Communist governments don't allow religion. They want the government to be their religion. Okay. As far as the arts goes, South Korea has a lot of different kinds of arts, and they still practice like traditional art. So you can see like this architecture here. This is more of like an ancient type of temple. You have sculptures like this. This one is made out of jade, um, and so they have a lot of different types of art. A lot of freedom to create. In North Korea, their art is just related to the Kims. Okay, that's all. The only kind of art they're allowed to have is something that glorifies the Kims. So this right here, this is Kim Jong Il. Um, looks like everybody really likes him, bringing him food and helping the soldiers. I'm not sure exactly what's going on in that, but that's the only kind of art they're allowed to have. It has to have the Kims in it, and you have to have one the leader, whoever the leader is, a picture of them up in your house. So Kim Jong Un is in every single house, which is crazy to me. Okay. All right, so that's it for the Koreas. I hope you guys learned a little something, and definitely you could see kind of like I said, the cultural divergence as a result of the different types of government. So, all right, I hope you guys have a good rest of the day.